The notice has been posted in the Board of Education office. The notice is also mailed to the press of the cities and filed with the municipal clerk of Vancouver Township. Approval of agenda. I need a motion to approve the agenda. I need a motion. We can discuss, if anybody has any questions after the motion is made.
I'll move. Motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion
You asked for questions?
for the agenda?
Yeah, thank you. Madam President, well, the first question is, unfortunately, has to be asked, with the advertisement and the times and everything with the meeting, are we gonna have any issues with having this meeting? Mr. K-Pack would be advice for that. Our meeting was advertised for 6 p.m. in the Press of Atlantic City legal notices back in January. And here we are tonight commencing at 7 p.m. I also have received emails 6, 6:30, and 7. My only question is, based on the legal notice, are we okay?
For the open public meeting?
Huh?
For the open public meeting,
Yeah.
yes. It was listed in the paper at 6 o'clock, then we went to 6:30, then we went to 7 o'clock. At 5 after 6, I started getting text messages, what time's the meeting? People didn't know. I found out quarter after 11 this morning. I was all prepared to come at 6 o'clock. So I believe the public is not properly informed.
I'd have to check the advertisement from the secretary, but we've advertised all meetings at the same time, but Mr. Williams said he saw it at 6 o'clock. That was never the intent to advertise it at 6 o'clock. I did not believe it was advertised at 6 p.m., but if it was, where's that put us now?
Where's what?
It's a question for Mr. Kayla.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm understanding the concern, because I thought the meetings in Pastor River always started at 7 o'clock.
Sir, Press of Atlantic City legal notices. It states that we are having a special meeting, and it is tonight, and it is to begin at 6. The only question there is, and the only answer that's needed to the question is, are we in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act by having this meeting? I'm not trying to, I'm trying my damn
We're having it at 7 o'clock.
not to be 6 o'clock.
No, and I'm not trying to be political, I'm just trying to understand.
Yes.
Because I don't know when it was, because I don't think
You
this
want
is a
to know?
special, this is not a special meeting, wasn't
It
this?
is, because it was not part of the original schedule, it was advertised at
Nope.
the open meeting.
But we had the reorg meeting in January, you scheduled this meeting.
No.
Oh, you did not?
We scheduled this meeting after
Madam
the reorg.
President, could you?
After the reorg meeting, this was scheduled, this was because of, the legal policy. This is
Okay.
special.
It was scheduled at 6.
There we go.
Huh?
I thought the meeting was scheduled for 6 tonight also. I happened to,
I have emailed 6:37. I have a legal notice, Press of Atlantic City, the date that it was published, and the time. I just want to ensure that we, as a school district, are having a meeting that is in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act.
Mr. Rose, when did you recognize that there might be a conflict with the time?
Ask, Mr. Brown, could you tell me when I sent you the email?
No, I don't know when you sent me the email.
Huh?
I do not recall when you sent me an email. I remember I got an email from, was it today?
Yesterday. From me.
So are we in compliance?
And that was after the time was changed again. That was after the time was changed.
From the meeting,
Okay.
what we said, that in fact,
This says 6 o'clock on January 2022, which was, what, a month and change ago, a little bit more than a month ago. It also says it's scheduled for a special meeting to interview applicants for an open board seat. I don't think that's on the agenda.
Nobody
Nobody, nobody had provided any interest.
Correct.
Okay. And then, my question would be, how is the meeting 7 o'clock now? How did we get to 7 o'clock?
We're not involved in it.
This would be
Like
a
that.
miscommunication between my office and the person who schedules the advertisements.
Okay.
So, this is the first I'm hearing, the advertisement was different than our normal. Mr. Williams asked for clarity what time the meeting was today, but did not mention that he viewed a legal ad that provided different information. That's the first I'm hearing that.
Well, it was also on the township's website, February 22nd, 2022 at 6 p.m. That was sent to me by our,
Yep.
Say it again, Mr. Fodor, one more time.
on the township's website, the resident is saying to me, the website, and it says 6 p.m. tonight, February 22nd, 2022.
Okay.
I think what the ultimate thing is if we go on with this meeting, are we literally doing it? Because we get
Yeah, I mean-
people false time and people came at 6 and see nobody left.
Do we know if people?
There was people here at 6 o'clock. There was staff here setting up at 6 o'clock. We've had people in the building since that time, but I understand the concern. I would like to get to quickly then, this is if we should not be conducting the meeting because we did not provide adequate notice of the time, date, and location of the meeting, then it would make sense to stop now and reschedule to another date. If
That's what
upon
I'm.
consultation from Mr. Kalak, if it makes more sense to continue, then we can continue. But
Again, everybody's here, number one. I don't know if anybody was here at 6 o'clock. If anybody was here who was a member of the public, who then waited here from 6 to 6:30 and then left and didn't have the opportunity. I know this was also scheduled as hybrid, right? So people can see this virtually, so they know it was both in person and virtually. And if there was a miscommunication, we just found it out today. Okay, that's a little bit concerning because now we're here, all right? Again, you have the choice, honestly. My legal opinion is if you want to say, we have this that says 6, it's on the township website at 6 as well, and you don't think we could have this meeting because you don't think it was properly advertised because of miscommunication, then that's fine. We can call it and move forward. However, everybody was here at either 6:30 or 7, or right before 7 o'clock, thinking that they had noticed that it was 7. I mean, the public was here right around 7 as well, a little bit beforehand. So, under those circumstances, you can hold the meeting. In other words, if you hold the meeting right now and you move forward, you're not going to be illegal, acting in any illegal capacity.
Basically, we can't get bit by that. Okay.
That was my whole question. There's nobody could make any type of legal claim against the district or the district's employees.
there's only one resolution on tonight's agenda, and that's to accept the audit that's going to be presented by Home and Finance. So, that's the only motion on the agenda.
So my recommendation at this point would be to carry forward with the meeting, have it tonight, and move forward.
I make a motion to move forward with the agenda as advertised.
Okay, then I have, one discussion point, to be added to the agenda, and that is, the resolution for a petition for the public to put before the state of New Jersey to request representation on the Little Lake Harbor School Board via petition to the New Jersey Department of Education, which I did email and, asked that it be put on here, I'm sure with everything else going on, my business ways. So I just asked that we would add that.
Can you just clarify exactly what it is you're looking for, so I can...
Resolution, do I have to show the resolution to her? Can I read it?
You can read it. It's fine.
Can I say something? Before we continue. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm having trouble understanding and hearing what's being said.
Yes.
And it's because the voices are muffled with the mask. And I don't know if I'm the only one having the problem. But I may have to ask you to repeat yourself or whatever, because I am having difficulty. Are people back there at being able to hear?
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Oh, very hard to hear.
guess it's me.
All right, they all agree, two people agree.
If he's wanting to maybe move up a little closer, there's no one at this table, there's room if he's wanting to move up. Should be able to hear it.
Doesn't the mandate go away in like a week?
All right, guys, we're gonna bring it back to order here. We're gonna conduct a meeting of the Vassar Board of Education. The motion on the floor is to approve tonight's agenda. We amended the motion to accept this resolution for a, sorry.
It's
we
a
need
resolution to add to the agenda regarding what, I'm sorry? I have
To,
You had stated regarding a petition.
Resolution for a petition to
Okay,
request representation on the Little Lake Harbor School Board.
got it, thank you.
so then we'll make a motion to amend the agenda to include this new item, which will be, become item 9, right? So we're going to amend the agenda to include item 9, a resolution to approve a petition as described by Ms. Adams. Can we have a motion to amend the agenda accordingly?
Motion.
I'm second.
All those in favor of the amended agenda, please say aye.
Aye, if it's permissible.
It's permissible.
Opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions?
Upstairs.
Noted. Motion carries.
Did you make the motion?
I just moved it, doesn't mean I have to.
Yeah, you
You
can't
move it, you have to.
Yeah.
Your vote is
Parliamentary procedure.
Oh, yeah.
Under Robert's rule.
You move it, you gotta vote yes. Alright, so that was to approve the vote amended agenda.
So we're going to take that roll call vote again to approve the amended agenda, which includes the petition as discussed by Ms. Adams. All in favor of approving the amended agenda, please say aye. Opposed, please say nay. Are there any abstentions? That motion carries. Next up, roll call for tonight's attendance, Ms. Adams,
Here.
Ms. Pittsburgher,
Here.
Mr. Fodor,
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Okay. For the first item up, we're going to turn it over to the presentation from the auditors, Holman Grenier. Jerry, can you hear us on the line there?
I can hear you, yes.
Go ahead, can
You hear me?
Hold on, Jerry, can you hear us?
Can you hear me? Is this working?
Loud and clear, sir.
Give a thumbs up if so. All right, there we go. Thank you. All right, thank you guys very much for having me here virtually tonight. I'm sorry that we're here so late. Unfortunately, the state continues to delay governmental entities across the state of New Jersey. We've been waiting on the state to release certain information in regards to other post-employment benefits. They have finally released that information about 2 weeks ago. That information then gets included into your audit report, and then we can finally go final from there. I'm happy to report that the state did extend the deadline for filing audits for school districts to March 15th. So we are still timely in accordance with the state standards. I kind of point people to 2 spots in the audit report if you're looking for kind of a quick and easy synopsis of everything, kind of where the district's gone, some of the major initiatives that's undertaken, some explanation behind the changes from year to year. And that's on the letter of transmittal, which is on page 1 of the report. The other area is the management's discussion and analysis on page 17 of the audit report. These are unaudited documents, but they give a little bit more insight into the activity of the district and some of the initiatives that's going on. I'm happy to report that we have an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That is the best opinion that we can give, that says there are no modifications necessary to bring us into compliance with accounting standards. I will point out that this year we do have an emphasis of matter paragraph included in the audit report. That's due to implementation of a new government accounting standards policy, GASB statement number 84. That statement was required to be implemented this year. and it required a prior period adjustment to the district's financial statements. In effect, what it did was really just take some of the funds that the district had and kind of shift where they are being located and where they're being reported on the financial statements. So in total, your numbers from prior year did not change. It's just kind of the funds in where they're individually located. Really, the main thing I want to report on tonight is fund balance at year end. I think that's important, especially as you guys are kind of beginning the laying the groundwork now for your budget for fiscal year 23, I mean, skipping ahead. At year end, the district had $720,000 of fund balance. About $73,000 of that was set aside in a tuition reserve for potential tuition cost adjustments, as well as $17,000 in unemployment reserve. There's another $45,000 or so that was set aside for encumbrances. Those were items that were purchased by the district, but the goods had not yet been received by year end. The district had also anticipated utilizing about $42,000 in its fiscal year 22 budget. So when you take all of that into account, left the district with the total fund balance number. Of that, the maximum that you're allowed to have is $250,000 for a district of our size. Left us with about $293,000 of what the state refers to as excess surplus. So that will require the district, you guys will be required to utilize that fund balance in your fiscal year 23 budget. So that'll be kind of the starting point as far as what you're planning to as you start your budget now. We also had a state single audit. It's an additional layer of testing where we're testing in accordance with specific grant requirements that are set forth by the granting agencies. I'm happy to report in our financial statement audit, as well as our state single audit, that we have no findings, no comments or recommendations that would require any sort of corrective action on behalf of the board or anything. Before I open it up to questions, I also just want to thank Mr. Brown and Mr. Yates and their staff for all the courtesies that have been extended to myself and my team. As you can imagine, COVID is something that continues to kind of interrupt things. So we try to do a lot of our work remotely, and I can't thank them enough for all the courtesies and help to try and make that happen. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has it.
Under management representation, we have, it says you have requested certain representation from management that are included in the management representation letter dated February 18, 2022. Can you explain what that means?
If I need you to unmute to that, and you're going to need to say your question over here, please. Go ahead.
All right, management representation. We have certain representation from management that are included in the management representation letter dated February 2022. Can you explain that?
There's a copy of the management rep letter in your audit book that I left with you.
It's right on the first page.
Jerry, did you hear the question from the
I
board
did
member?
not. No, I'm sorry. I did not hear the question.
There's a question about the management rep letter and what it contains.
The management rep letter and what it contains.
The February 18th, 2022 letter that came with the audits.
Okay, my apologies. So there's just certain affirmative statements and things like that we're required to just make the district aware of, make governance aware of, really. So if there were specific, just talking about some of the accounting policies and things like that, if we encountered any difficulties in performing the audit, there's nothing really of any significance there. If we did have issues that maybe rose to the level of, something that wasn't really a significant deficiency, so it wouldn't be included in the report, we may include that on this letter, but there was nothing of that nature. But this is just something, this letter is something that we're required to communicate these certain things to governance upon the completion of our audit. So, but there's nothing there of anything of concern.
Any other questions for Jerry?
I just have a quick question. So, because I'm not a mathematician, so am I correct in saying we have 43,000 to be used in surplus for 2023?
No, it's 293,000.
That's the total, not 250 minus, or 290.
Correct. Jerry, there's a question about the amount of excess surplus that has to go to next year's budget.
Yep.
And
Go ahead.
$293,303 is the exact amount.
Thank you.
any other questions for Jerry?
Sir, our total district-wide for this budget year is $1,982,532. With the numbers we have in this budget report, based on student population, what is the cost for people for basketball township students?
So if I may ask that on your behalf, Jerry, because that's not a number that the auditor would have handy, but and I'll send this to you after, but when we produce a budget for taxes, so when the board adopted this budget for this current year, they adopted this budget last April, right? In that, usually it's page 70-ish of an 80-page document. There's something called advertised per pupil cost. And it takes the budget that's been submitted to DOE and breaks down into different categories the advertised per pupil cost for the district. That's a number that, and Jerry, I don't mean to jump over you, but
That's fine.
another way to get, it's not to get it.
What's that?
What's that?
It's in the 10-year book.
It's in the advertised budget for taxes that gets posted, and I'll share that with the board after the meeting so you can see those per pupil allocations. You're welcome. Anybody else?
Can you, actually, in reference to this question, give me a cost, by percentage,
You're asking for two different things, though. He's asking what the per pupil allocation is at Bass River, which is different than the per student tuition rate at Little Lake Harbor. So I'll look those numbers up after the meeting, and I'll send them to the Board of Education after the meeting. So we're looking at two things there: the advertised per pupil cost from the Bass River side, and the certified rate of tuition from the Little Lake Harbor side.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jerry?
Thank you
Thank you for your time, Jerry. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ms. Adams, did you just want me to fire through the new business stuff that's?
You said board work session, is just the audit itself?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to ask again, does anybody have any other questions regarding the audit? Do you have any other questions regarding the audit?
Yeah, any questions regarding one?
Okay, Mr. Brown, we'll go on to the business.
Right, so the first item up is the open board seat at Bass River. We had a deadline last week for interested members of the public to send resumes. They were interested in the open board seat. We did not receive any interest for that open board seat, so we extended that deadline until Thursday, March 10th. So to the residents of Bass River, if you're interested in serving on the Board of Education, please email your resume to me at nbrown@prsdnj.org. The next item up is,
I just have
Yep.
one quick question. Does that March 10th reflect the last day for 65 days we work over to the county superintendent?
no, but I'll do that math and check it. It might actually be beyond that.
Oh, okay.
Because it starts from the reorg date, which was the 10th. So that's probably going to put us really close to the 65 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be real tight on the 65 days. But to be clear, the township or the county, they don't want to come in and do this. They want somebody from the community to step forward so they don't have to appoint. If I can speak for the county. I think generally speaking, they want to stay out of selecting board members. It was asked for an update on the sale of the school building. So we had two walkthroughs of potentially interested buyers that were held over the previous couple of weeks. We have two more walkthroughs scheduled this week. And somewhat encouraging, there's been more than 21,000 views of the district's listing on deals. We don't see any bidding activity yet. Do you want me to just keep firing through here? Or any questions about that?
Yeah, I have one update on the sale of the school building. I attended the last township meeting, and town council had said they had been back and forth for a year trying to get answers to questions about the building. Don't know if they want to buy it, don't know if they don't want to buy it, I don't know. So I said, give me your questions, I'll bring it to the meeting, and I'll get you answers. So I'm going to give you this letter from Mr. Nick Capriglione. Would you please contact him and give him his answers? I know
Sure,
you
I want to
have
be very clear that the township, that information is not accurate. I would encourage somebody to send me the email in which they requested this information.
You wrote it down, sorry. You wrote all those questions.
I know, but he's been telling you that they've been trying to get information for a year, and that's simply not true, and I want to make it reflect the record accurately that that's not been what's happened. We met with the township in September 2020.
Yep.
They requested information, we supplied them with a binder of information, a request for information package. They did not follow up with any official request after that information was given to them. And, you know, I would say that anybody who's ever bought a piece of commercial real estate knows that the due diligence of a buyer is the buyer's responsibility or the new owner's potential responsibility. But we have always been willing to work with the town, and we are still willing to work with the town. You can give me that info and I'll follow up with Mr. Capriglione. After I saw that article, I did reach out to the mayor immediately and said, this information is inaccurate, let's meet and discuss it. I haven't heard back.
Are they on?
Nothing back.
That's correct.
You know, I've been on the equation for a year. I'm just saying, they're making these claims and they're all over these papers and everything else. Did you say anything about emails referring to it?
Yeah, I would say that never, I do not recall receiving a single email requesting any information on it.
Okay. Did you ever get anything or hear anything or know anything?
No, I was at the September 2020 meeting. And
For the record, I asked when I first got elected to the board at the township meeting for a representative to come to the meeting. The mayor showed up once, I think Mr. Capriglione 2, maybe 3 times, then boom, nothing. So, again, I said, in that, they need to come here and ask the question.
We can only, on our end, we're a separate elected body. We can only bring a horse to water, we can't share it.
Well, look, the door's not shut. Anybody that comes up, we'll talk to them, any information we can provide, we'll provide it. I mean, we have, since the beginning, worked diligently to find a prospective buyer or partner for this building. And I've long believed that the township was the best partner for that. However, that's not a decision I make, certainly. And so I welcome the opportunity to continue that discussion.
And if I'm wrong, you can correct me, but I believe they were given a binder of everything in.
They were. They were.
Thank you.
I'm just stating, we need to get some resolution, some questions that answers and need to be answered and move forward if need be as a Board of Education. Thank you.
Yes, I might have misunderstood what was said. Did you say there were 2 offers on the school building?
No,
No.
that's not.
zero.
No, bidding still going.
2 walkthroughs.
Oh, 2 walkthroughs are scheduled.
We did 2 already, and we have 2 more scheduled.
Okay. What is is there a minimum bid on the school building?
400,000.
Okay.
Any other questions on the sale of the school building? There was a request from the township they would like to take the dumpsters after the school was sold. I should have put that in as a motion. We can add that to the next agenda in March, because we'll still have them then, but they did request this and some other equipment. I'll put them all together on the next month's agenda. I touched on briefly the potential buyer walkthroughs. We've had like I said, two performed already, we have 2 more scheduled. There's a note on here about shared service process. I don't know what that note's for, but I will just point out that with the shared service agreement ending with Pinelands and Bass River, I would encourage the board to post for business administrator soon, because ideally you'd be interviewing that candidate prior to the March meeting. There is no April meeting, and that person's supposed to take over May 3rd, and they want to be up and running at that time. And we'll certainly assist with that transition, but the sooner we can identify that candidate, the better.
With that being said, I'm gonna pose the question to you once again, what if the school's not sold by then? Now we're gonna have to put that on to a new business administration?
Clearly, that is the answer, yes.
Clearly, that is the answer from the Pineland Board of Education, who we have the agreement with, or who? It's our agreement, that you probably have written from you, like, with Pineland Regional. Are you representing that Pineland Regional has had a discussion? The Pineland Regional Board of Education, who makes those decisions, have had a discussion and come to that determination. Do you have anything in writing, Mr. Taylor?
I have the services agreement. I have something in writing from the Pinelands Regional Board of Education, dated January 20, a letter from Mr. Brown, to the Bass River Board of Education, notice of termination of shared services agreement, what I have in my possession. I have a February 4 letter from the Pinelands Regional Board of Education, saying that there was a meeting on January 24, 2022, under Section 12, Operations, and resolved that the Board of Ed approved the termination of the shared services agreement with Bass River Township School Board of Education Business Office Services effective on or about May 3, 2022, and that looked like it was unanimous in the roll call vote on that date.
And a roll call vote is unanimous. Where is the resolution that was discussed at that meeting? Because it's an open public meeting matter. And is there a resolution that was discussed in open public and a vote there taken?
I would have no idea, Mr. Williams, because I don't represent the Pinelands Regional Board of Education.
So I would have to, back to this question. If it needed a resolution, how do we find out if it needed a resolution? And if in fact it did need a resolution, what is the ramifications of it not being held?
So your question is, to me, as your Bass River Board of Education, whether or not Pinelands should have done a resolution in that. I'm going to respectfully say to you, I don't want to talk about what Pinelands should have done and not done in terms of their board or their council's advice. I could certainly contact the Pinelands Regional Board of Education Council to see what happened. Or Mr. Brown and Mr. Yates, or in that capacity as business administrator, you could certainly ask them if there was a resolution, or you could look for the minutes that are online in terms of what they did at their January 24th meeting to see if there's a resolution regarding that. But that's one thing. But the question ultimately I think you have is, does this contract, that shared services agreement that you have, this notice of termination, does that require a resolution? That's a different question, right? Because if you read this services agreement, or shared services agreement, it's between Pinelands and this district. The notice of termination is real loose. It's real, there's not much requirement to it, right? It says either party may terminate the agreement by giving the other party 60 days prior written notice of termination. In the event of termination, the contracting district shall pay Pinelands for all services rendered up to including the date of termination. All it says is that it has to be written notice, 60 days of termination. Doesn't mention anything about a resolution or anything else regarding that. But if it's an action that one board is taking that's short of the time that this would run out, I do have a letter and I do have a certified, board action that happened. So, I can only go by the information I have in front of me, but if you you want me to ask the council or Pinelands Regional what exactly went down at that meeting? I'd be more than happy to do it.
I would like that. I would like you to ask that question.
The Board of Education like that.
Yep.
So we have to do, what do we have to do to ask for that? If that was a-
Yeah.
And another question is, do you know who wrote the original?
Do you know who approved it? The Board of Education. One that you sat on the other side, and the one that multiple members in this room sit on now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, now I've got a question. What changed from being able to handle everything that was going on with this school closing and the sale and everything?
I think your
Let me
question
finish
is,
my question, please. You can sit there, you're smart, you can do what you want. You have a right to answer questions. You're paid by the residents of this town and our tax dollars. We're the Board of Education of Bastrop.
Kevin, what's your question?
My question is, what has changed in the last 2 years where you can handle it, there was no problem, so all of a sudden you have so much on your plate? You have less with the schools, there's no school district here.
Mr. Fodor, hold on. I just want to make sure that what we're doing here as the board is not an imposition of a decision that was made in
Well, I'm trying to find out how there was a
in
decision.
line with the contract, right? So all I have before me is the documents before me. I didn't sit at that meeting, I have no idea what happened. I was given these documents that say, this is what the contract says, 60 days, written notice ahead of time. That's all it says. I have a letter that lives, January 20, so that's, and the services go to May 3. So if you go January 20 to March 20, it'll be 60 days.
Yeah, but
Apparently,
did you receive a letter prior to
Hold on.
the 24th meeting?
hold on one second, but I can only go by the documents I have in front of me, right? So the contract would be until, March 20, would be the 60 days. According to this letter, it says you're gonna go through May 3, 2022, so it's an extra 6 or 7 weeks, with the understanding that they were gonna try to close out all business. You know, the budget, try to close out the sale of the school, the gov deals, the walkthrough, and all that other information. That's the information I have, that's the information I have from the Pinelands Regional Board of Education, approved it by way of a resolution. That's the decision that was made by the board.
Was the president, our president notified of?
Kevin, I just want to clarify your question. Okay, so when the shared service agreement was signed originally, okay, I believe it was 6 years, okay? Now,
no. The send receipt agreement is a 6-year agreement.
Forgive me, you're correct, Mr. Brown. So Kevin, your question really to Mr. Brown is, why would Highlands Regional School District, Mr. Brown being a BA, decide we're done?
Exactly.
That's all we want to know, not about the terms and conditions of the shared services. Simply, what transpired that this decision was made? That's all.
So what you're inquiring is, I'm gonna say politely, infringements on my personal life. I discussed you and I gave you the courtesy of a discussion about this decision prior to taking action at the Board of Education meeting. I understand there's some concern, and quite honestly, it's flattering. You guys wanted to stick around for an infinite period of time until the work is done. But I won't address your specific questions. It's a decision that was made. If you want to challenge the legality of it, you're within your right to do so. But I discussed this matter with the board president prior to it becoming a matter of board decision at Pinelands, and I'm very comfortable with the decision I made. And that's all I'm going to say.
Ms. Adams?
Is that true, Ms. Adams?
So I would like to comment and make it perfectly clear to everyone who may be listening or in this room. Mr. Brown did discuss with me very briefly, and as he puts it very politely, there's personal reasons why he was going to terminate. I did not in any way, I did not in any way say that or discuss with Mr. Brown the shared service agreement, which entailed more than a BA.
Now, I went to that meeting on the 24th. When it came up, I asked, when did this come about?
I didn't hear the first part of what you just said.
I went to the 24th of January's meeting at
Finance.
Yes. When it came time to ask if anybody had questions about the agenda, I did. I asked when that came about and when was this done? I was told by Mr. Brown it was done that day. Another
You
gentleman.
asked me when the motion was on the agenda that day.
I was
Do you
told
mean, do
by.
I owe you a history of my life? I don't.
Hold on, wait.
If this conversation about my life continues any further, I'm gonna excuse myself from the room and we're gonna have a different conversation.
Hold on,
Mr.
okay.
Elect.
Hold on. What is the question that you have, Mr. Fuller? In terms of what has happened with the shared services agreement, 'cause you went to the meeting, you just said on the 24th.
Yeah, I went to the meeting. My thing is,
Well, hold on, wait, 1 second. You went to the meeting and it was approved by Pinelands that the shared services agreement would be terminated, well, there was notice that it would be terminated effective May 3. And that was voted on at that meeting. I'm getting it.
No, you're right.
Looking at this, I wasn't there, so that's what I'm saying. But that would seem compliance with what this shared services agreement says. And that was a board action. So that's a board action. I understand Mr. Brown is an employee of the board, and it's odd because he's shared services here, Little Egg, Pinelands, maybe one of the reasons why the governor's trying to get everything together as, much lesser districts in the state. But the board took action. That is done. It's completed at this point. I'm not quite sure what the questions are, what the concerns are, moving forward. There may have been miscommunication, there may have been, a misunderstanding as to what happened or the reasons for it. But again, as representing this board and moving forward, I can only go with the paperwork that's here and what was done. And quite honestly, if there's a concern about how Mr. Brown did it, if you think that it could be something that could be legally challenged, as he said, then I would recommend any further discussion on that, go attorney-client, and go into executive session and discuss that. Not here in the public, not here with Mr. Brown and Mr. Gates here, because this is not the forum for that discussion.
well, some of it should be discussed in public. These are the taxpayers that came out here. This is where taxpayers want to go to send their children, and their children go to Little Lake Harbor Township. They used to come to school here. I'm sure they have questions about this too. So yes, this is the time to discuss it in public forum. Yes, we have executive session for certain things.
But I'm gonna tell you, this is not the section to discuss this on this agenda right now. Because one, we're not in public forum, two, we're not public comment. We went to this particular shared services agreement and then all the questions and.
But this is an agenda item.
I think.
This is an agenda item.
It is for an agenda item as to what happened. I'm telling you what happened, and you folks went to the meeting, so you know what happened. As to the reasons it happened, the particular reasons that the Board of Education of Pinelands chose to decide that, that's a question you can have for Pinelands if you go to the next meeting. Or as I said, I could certainly ask council for Pinelands. I don't know if council will tell me what the board's reasons were for that decision. That's a different story, but they might just say, hey, for Pinelands, we decided as we decided.
So it's Pinelands, it's actually Dr. McCool who made the decision.
Say it again.
Would that be Dr. McCool making the decision?
No, it'd be the Board of Education.
It would be the whole Board of Education.
Right, the board
Determining
has to act.
services for us.
Right, the board has to act on a resolution, if there was one, or act on, the motion to make the, shared services agreement be terminated under the terms of this contract. And that's, again, I wasn't there, I can only go by what I see, but that's what was done. So, you're absolutely within your right to go to the finance board meeting and express your concerns about that. Or maybe you're disappointed with it, you're totally free as a board member, or as a member of the public to go to their meeting.
Honestly, personally, y'all know me, I speak my mind. I think it was a sneaky, underhanded deal.
By finance, and if you have the
Yes,
right.
with this school district. I think there was gold set, the gold line is in sight now, and they're gonna hit it. There was an agenda when they came here to do the shared services and all that, which I voted no on the study that was done. Now, just like everybody in this room pretty much said it's gonna happen, this happens. We're looking like idiots while they're all stepping back. And they're leaving everything on the table for us to handle the school board. They basically, to me, they lied to us. They sat here and allowed everybody here, everybody in this town, and everybody else that was here that night.
And you have, but are you talking about the Board of Education?
I'm talking about Dr. McCooley, I'm talking about the Board of Education, I'm talking about the Stockton University that did the study from A to Z. Everyone that was involved with the closing of this
It's
school.
another conspiracy theory, isn't it?
Regionalization.
Excuse me?
It's another conspiracy theory.
Let me be heard one second. Regionalization, what's being spoken to in general here, and the paper trail is that. However, I must be fair and honest, these gentlemen weren't even in that equation when it started.
Absolutely right.
They were not. I just wanted to make that clear. However, what is going on? Stevie Wonder just called me, she wanted to know if I seen it.
This, on my end, is no disagreeing with you guys. You guys have been above and beyond. You've done great. You've absolutely done great. You've gone above and beyond for our school year. But, with your boss and things like that, I understand that too, and there's situations there. But I just feel as though there was an agenda of coming here and closing the school and walking away and then leaving us in the dark. And now, the goal is almost there. They see the light at the tunnel while we're looking backwards.
Mr. Cota, that is just completely untrue.
Really?
I'm not gonna convince you otherwise, and I'm not
Well,
gonna try.
well,
Hey, I gave you a minute, okay? And I'm gonna go against my better judgment. But the reason I'm leaving is entirely because of something happening in my personal life.
Okay.
And that's as far as I'm gonna go to describe it. I'm entitled to make that decision, just like everybody in this room would be if they were experiencing something in their personal life that dramatically impacted their availability and all these other family factors. So if you want to seize on this opportunity where I have a tragic thing happen in my personal life, and you guys want to distort this into some conspiracy theory about a 10-year plan, look, nothing's going to stop you from developing conspiracy theories and spreading them around town. It hasn't yet. And so I will just tell the public, these are untrue. This has everything to do with it is my decision that I could no longer continue this. Those decisions will remain between me and my family, but I appreciate everybody's concern about my family. But I can assure you it's not as exciting as it's being made out to be.
Now, if I may quote you, on the night you became the DA for the school district, you said that you were all for shared services. It's the best thing that could happen to save all these towns money and everything else. Did you or did you not?
This tool is a case
That's
study for shared services.
That was a yes or no question.
We're done with the back and forth, guys.
That would be a yes, because I have it, so.
That's not what I said, but you'll make it up. Don't worry, you always do.
Just like you do.
Alright, let's bring it back to the agenda. So,
Old business, and the communities will decide what they think. Old business, please. If that's okay with everybody.
Well, what I would like to do with the agenda item shared service process is that Mr. Brown did send us what he is going to do during his time here. And Mr. Brown, would you like to read that? Would you like to read?
Excuse me?
Would you like me to read how you have accommodated what you're going to finish by year? That's what I meant about the process. If not, I can certainly.
I know it wasn't an opportunity to play gotcha on a board decision from Pinelands, because that's what it feels like, but hey, say your piece.
So our idea of the shared service process is to just finish out the budget work for the 22-23 school year, which obviously has to be approved by the board. We also would like to see the closeout of the sale of the building, after which time there won't be much work to do for the board, so it made sense for us to push the date out beyond the sale of the building. We are required to give you 60 days notice. We're providing over 90 according to the timeline. Nobody wants to leave work unfinished. We'd like to see the sale of the building through, but that's still in the board's wishes. And we're going to present the budget to the board that the board will either approve or reject for your decision. But that was our intent with the shared service process, was to finish out this work so that whoever takes over, whether it be an interim or a part-time BA, really doesn't have much to do. We would be happy to help in that transition.
Thank you.
So old business
You'd sent me a question that I sent to Mr. Kalak's firm, of questions about some of the terms and conditions in the Gutfield's contract. I sent a reply from Mr. Savage from Mr. Kalak's office to your attention. Did you receive it?
I don't recall it, but if you'd like to tell me, I'm sure it was pretty simple. I'm not too elongated on my questions. So was it just simply, can we extend the contract? Do we have to accept any bid that comes in?
I don't recall the guidance. I'd have to read the email, so I'll follow up with you after the meeting.
I think that maybe follow up after the meeting or thereafter, and then there could be a consensus given by the entire board to not delay anything in the future or cause us undue hardship or you guys. That's the way
I don't understand your point here.
on how we're gonna move forward with doing all these things and get them
We just wanted to
done.
make sure
Whatever
we're
we
not
would
doing
need
contract.
legally,
You know, what we understand.
that's all. What we would need legally to make it.
You're just saying an explanation of what they're gonna do. Is that what you're saying? You're saying an explanation of what they're gonna do in the next 90 days?
Let's, everything they have, everything we have, let's push it out. Get it done.
Regarding the shared services.
No,
No, go ahead.
no. It's regarding the sale of.
All, everything that was brought up, yeah.
The last of the bids is March 10th, right? That's the last date,
Last of the bidding is the 11th, I believe.
the 11th.
Tommy, I'm not sure what explain again.
We need services to get us to the finish line of whether or not the school is even going to sell.
Right.
We have timelines, we have budgets, we have payments, lease purchase, that close the doors. All those things need to be addressed, and we don't need to make it more difficult.
I don't want to interrupt you, Mr. Williams, but that's what Mr. Yates was just explaining.
I know that, that's all what I'm reiterating.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item.
Regionalization update, I know that the regionalization meetings were postponed or rescheduled.
Yes, we're gonna schedule another regionalization committee meeting soon, so we'll send out dates, to the representatives from this board, see how.
We surveyed all the regionalization committee members, and we're waiting to have a majority of responses before we pick the new date. We couldn't, there was nobody from Eagleswood that could attend the meeting last time, so we want to make sure there was representation from everybody, so we pushed it back.
Thank you. Okay. Move on here. Public comment. The floor is now open to members of the public, the Board of Education.
Hold on. Yeah,
That's the audit,
to accept the audit.
to accept the audit, right?
And then we also have number 9, which would be your amended resolution. If you'd like to read it.
Did you put that on the 9A? How did you do that?
Number 8 is the audit, number 9 is the petition.
Everything else just moved down.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go back to number 8. Resolve the Board of Education accept the annual audit report as presented. There are no audit recommendations, therefore no corrective action plan is required at this time. Do I hear a motion? Is there a motion?
I'll move it. Oh, I will move it, and the audit is the audit, and it's based on some tests and everything else. I mean, it is a clean audit according to what we pay for from an auditor, and everything is good, which is good. So, dollars are the dollars, the cents are the cents, and we need to move forward.
Need a second.
Do I?
I'll second it.
I understand other people feel otherwise, but when you go through 100 of these.
So roll call vote, Ms. Adams,
Yes.
Ms. Pittsburgher,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Fodor,
No.
motion carries.
Okay, number 9. So number 9 is the resolution to request representation on the
Yeah, that's what she's telling us.
Talk louder, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Michelle, wait.
Do you have the resolution here?
I
Can you read this
I do.
out?
I'd rather everybody hear it and it's read.
Yeah.
So it's clear as to what it is.
No problem, I just making sure I have the language proper on here, you got it. Do we have a motion for this?
We have a motion to read the resolution.
Motion.
And a
Read the
second?
resolution second.
Was that Mr. Williams on the second?
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. Reed. Resolution urging repair to the broken and unfair send receive board representation system. Whereas the Bass River Township Board of Education does hereby find as follows. Whereas due in large part to decreasing state aid on or about March 25th, 2020, the board entered into a send-receive relationship with Little Lake Harbor Board of Education for the education of the district's kindergarten through 6th grade students for the period of July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2026. Whereas New Jersey Statute A provides if the pupils of the sending district comprise less than 10% of the total enrollment of pupils in the grades of the receiving district, in which the pupils of the sending district will be enrolled, the sending district shall have no representation on the receiving district Board of Education. Whereas the board does not have a representation on the Little Lake Harbor Township Board of Education, because the board's kindergarten through 6th grade students comprise less than 10% of the total enrollment in those grades in the Little Lake Harbor School District. Whereas a lack of representation on the Little Lake Harbor Township Board of Education effectively results in the board ceding all local fiscal and policy decisions to the Little Lake Harbor Board of Education, which greatly diminishes the ability for Bass River residents to have a say in what happens in their children's school while having no control over school taxes. Now therefore be it resolved by the Bass River Township Board of Education that it hereby urges the Governor of New Jersey, the Commissioner of Education of New Jersey, the New Jersey Senate, and the New Jersey State Assembly to repair this broken and unfair system, which does not allow for the board to have representation on the Little Lake Harbor Township Board of Education. This is a resolution to go out into the public with a petition to get signed so that we may have a vote or at least serve on the board for representation of Little Lake Harbor, which is where our students go to Bass River. Do I have discussion?
All right, roll call vote, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, just one comment. I know the laws don't currently allow it, but a town like ours doesn't come forward and challenge it. These things will remain that way forever, just as everything else is in education today. So yes. Very well.
Yeah, I'm gonna vote, but I did want to say something. You are going to include, signatures from all residents, is that correct? Not just from, parents that are sending their children to Little Lake Harbor?
Correct.
Okay, and, I think people should keep in mind, that basically what this is for the residents, we're paying taxes, to the schools, so you're having taxation without representation. And, I'm voting yes.
Yes. The only thing I have is, as Carol said, we could be left with no representation for the elementary students. This is something that we need to do, something we need to push, we need signatures, we need to get it up to the state level, we need to get it to move. You know, we want to support the residents as much as we like the residents to support us. So this is something good for the future children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, whatever. And I think it's a very good thing to be done. The only question I do have, and I think I know the answer, but they do not have to be voters, right?
Sorry.
They don't have to be able to vote, right?
They
They don't
have to be
be
registered voter for a petition, correct?
They do?
Yes, yes.
Oh, so they do have to register voters. Okay. I will, thank you.
And your vote was yes?
Yes.
Bonnie's last vote was a yes.
Did he vote?
You voted yes.
Bonnie? Mrs. Bittsburg?
She voted yes.
Yes. And Mrs. Adams, you were a yes. Motion carries.
They were talking.
And now we're on public comment. Would you like me to read? Okay, sure.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Fuller said that. That's right.
Mrs. Adams, there's someone on the line, call her in, so after we get through public comment, we'll pull the caller in first.
At this time, we'll go to public comment. The floor is now open to members of the public. The Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express what each statement made by a participant limited to 3 minutes as cited in policy number 0167. Should we go to the first call?
Yeah, so we'll go to caller first. You need some mute, is that right?
Mute or unmute?
And, on Zoom, please.
All right. I'm unmuted.
Can the caller hear me?
I need to unmute, microphone in Zoom.
And the caller for public comment here.
Is
Is there a member of the public on joining us virtually that has a public comment?
Looks like
They just left.
Yeah, the phone just disconnected.
All
All right, so we'll go to in person.
any members of the public in attendance?
Need it again.
Mr. Swanson? Sure, if you don't mind.
Mr. Swanson, can you stand and state your name, please?
Carl Swansea. I just had a couple of questions. Regarding the shared services agreement, what all is included in shared services currently between Highlands and Disaster River at a high level?
So right now, we provide facilities maintenance for the school building, some technology support services with these gentlemen here, and then business office functions, central business office functions.
Okay, then all that goes well. And then the question for the board is, have you initiated a search or do you have something in mind for replacing those services, since everything coming up so quickly?
Carl, can you ask that again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, speak louder.
Okay.
I'm tired of trouble.
You want to know?
So since the shared services are going away so soon, I asked if the board has ideas or if they make a motion or whatever has to happen to start recruiting for a replacement position for that process?
Yeah.
So is there a motion that needs, I'm just like,
No,
is
sir.
there a motion that needs to be done like now?
To clarify, once the shared service agreement is over, it expires, my services also go away. What we've said is we are willing to assist the board in the transition period.
Right.
But they do need to initiate a search, to your point, as soon as possible, which was a motion, well, it was an item on the agenda tonight, that we should post for a BA as soon as possible.
Oh, no, that is on the agenda tonight.
Not the posting, no board action is required for that. Just that, what we have on the agenda tonight said, it's time to begin search. Just been urging to the board that you need to begin your search for a BA.
Okay. So no, there's no motion needed to actually begin the search?
No.
Okay. The other question I had, is regarding the school debt, the remaining debt on the school. I know it's been a couple of years, and I know back then it's like $400,000.
Yeah,
I know that was a pretty quick payoff.
It is, yeah,
We're approximately where we're at.
Yeah, I was gonna say, a little less than $300,000 right now in outstanding debt. And then what we had is, the plan of the board when we last talked about this was using the proceeds from the sale of the building to then pay off the debt. And we did reach out to Phoenix Advisors, I believe. Occasion Financial or Phoenix Advisors to get us a payoff quote should that time come. So we are planning for those things as it speaks. The business office is,
If for some reason it doesn't sell, how much longer, I know we're paying quite a bit.
you have debt until 2033 or 34, but remember, it goes down every year, and you'll start to pay off certain loans, and then your payments, you know, when I started, your payments were close to $160,000 a year. You don't quote me on that number, that's just an approximation. And then now yeah, once they start to pay off, your debt is gonna go down, your payment annually is gonna go down. Correct. And we haven't assumed any new debt in our time.
Right, okay. And then, let's see, last question for if bids come in for the school, say a bid comes in at $400,001, is there a requirement? Who makes the ultimate decision? Does that go to the board? Do they then decide if they want to accept it or not?
Correct, yeah, it goes to the board, they're under no obligation to accept the bid, I believe.
Any bid?
Right.
Okay.
They have a minimum of $400,000 bid. So if it comes in at that minimum, the board would then discuss it and make a decision at that time. Right.
And I just want to reiterate, I was at the same meeting with the township, and they said, yeah, we got some information, but we've been waiting for a year for information. I wanted to hear, I heard a response tonight. Thank you, I appreciate that, and a little disappointed that communications haven't been better. Thank you.
And half of those questions were answered, Mr. Swansea, in the acceptance of the lease purchase stuff for the things that were going to be done, remediated, and changed. There's 3 specific files for the lease purchase stuff. And a lot of those things were clear cut in those lease purchase agreements.
Oh, that was a lot of the questions.
Correct. Mrs. Adams, the ones that we had reviewed?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and you haven't heard at all since the last commissioners meeting from the commissioners?
No,
Oh, you did, you got that letter.
And this letter, he actually answered his own questions.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swansea.
Scott Rush. You guys probably don't know me. I'm a resident here at Bass River, but I have stepchildren with the last name completely owned, so there's a lot of ties here. So I just want to offer real quick an outsider perspective. What I saw tonight was kind of embarrassing. And I'm not saying that on any one particular person, but I think what everyone needs to remember, especially people watching at home, Bass River is a very proud town. They had a school. They were very proud of their school. For whatever reason, I'm not blaming Pinelands, and I'm certainly not blaming Mr. Brown. We got to where we are today, where they have to send their kids to Little Lake Harbor. And I think there needs to be a measure of compassion throughout the entire room, as well as everyone at home right now, of exactly what this community's lost in this whole scenario. Certainly, Mr. Brown, Mr. Yates, you're more than entitled. I don't know what's going on in your personal life. I'm sure it is something that necessitates this move. So I'm not holding that against you. But there needs to be some sort of compassion here, because otherwise you're going to find yourselves in May with no business administrator, no sale in the building, no representation on the Little Lake board. This is the time for everyone to kind of come together in these last 2 months to make sure that once May hits, and hopefully this building is sold, if that's the goal, that you guys still have a say in your children's education moving forward. Like anyone else, I wish he was here. I have, like I said, 3 kids who would, well, actually only 1 now in elementary school, who would still be going here if the building was open. So I just want to kind of go on record. I don't know who's watching. This is a very emotional night. This is a very emotional situation, and yelling at each other from across the room or being at home and yelling at your laptop watching this isn't going to solve any of the problems. And I'm also not going to lie, I'm doing a little bit of shuck and jive because the person who called in that got disconnected is around the corner and is on their way here. And so I'm trying to stall a little bit of time for you. But I do have one question, and it may have been answered and I missed it, and I'm sorry if that's the case. What happens if on May 3rd, I think the date was, if May 3rd comes and you guys have not hired a new yet?
Well, that's where we go into the county superintendent's office. And they would assist us with that as well as the New Jersey School Board Association.
Are they going to provide temporary help, or are they going to take you over?
No, they will provide us assistance as to what direction to go forward. That's what the county superintendent does.
Just making sure that, you know, all the ducks are in a row, because the last thing I think anyone wants to see is to get right to that goal line and then you're out of line.
That's where I think Mr. Rucker, Mr. Brown, Mr. Yates, and our attorney, Mr. Kalak, come in. They know what they're working on. Mr. Kalak knows what we have to do legally in the educational system in the state of New Jersey, which God only knows what is and what isn't anymore. But anyhow, to get us direction on how we proceed.
And then just one more follow-up question if I could, and I guess this would be more towards Mr. Brown and Mr. Yates. In the event that the state hears your resolution and decides to put a Bass River representative on the Little Lake board, Mr. Brown, how would that work? Because that would give you an uneven amount of board members. Does that mean one of the Little Lake seats converts to Bass River?
I don't know the answer to that, but there is precedent in the state of New Jersey where a sending district and a send-receive relationship has representation on the Board of Education, typically when they're over 10%. I've never had direct experience with it, so I would defer to those school districts that are experiencing that right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a question, I wanted to say something. Sure. You seem very interested in what's going on with your children, et cetera, in the Lake Harbor. I myself am very upset that there is going to be no representation on the Little Lake School Board. And all I'm going to say is we really need the support of the residents and especially the parents, their support, because I don't know if you understood or not, but the final thing is we want the signatures and we would like to go. We have to have something changed at the New Jersey board level, which is going to be very tough.
I don't think you're going to have a problem.
So I just wanted to say we're going to need, all the support, any that can get, the signatures, et cetera. That will all be set up for you. But,
I don't think we're gonna have a problem getting signatures on that petition, but what I would suggest, I will be there in March. I forget the exact date of their meeting, Mr. Brown can probably tell you, but I suggest all of you show up and say the same thing in public forum there. Everyone should stand up in public forum and say the same thing, that there's a resolution out, and this is what the community of Bass River wants.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public?
I have one more question, if I can speak again.
Sure, Mr. Swanson.
Question regarding regionalization, we've been talking about that, and we have shared services currently with Little A. What happens if regionalization comes along? Are we represented fully just through Little A? Are they gonna decide to regionalize for us because we have a send-and-receive relationship? Or is that independent? Does that go back to the townships for townships, board approval and consideration if that should happen?
So I'll defer to that question to when we have stakeholder engagement with the Corsio group for, that's the law firm that did the study of regionalization, but the discussions have always been that every member community of Pinelands, so Bass River, Eagleswood, Tuckerton, and Little Egg, all have seats on a new regionalized Board of Education.
Would have at least one, is the way I understand it.
And I'll have a vote on whether all the taxpayers in all four towns have a vote in whether or not that regionalization.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's been clear from the beginning.
People are telling me no, I'm like, wow.
Now, so to be clear about that, there's a distinction between a send receive, which is more a consolidation. It's a tuition-based payment when you send your students, you pay tuition for them to attend another school district.
Yeah.
A regionalization is a new school district entirely. We basically be dissolving all the sending school districts or those who choose to participate.
So the send and receive would dissolve.
The send receive would go away, because you created a K through 12.
Bass River chose to participate.
Correct. Correct.
Then I guess optionally, maybe that could, they could continue the send and receive outside of the regionalization.
Well, then it would be a K-12 regional that would include all the towns, so there wouldn't be any assessment to the city.
Okay.
But I think that's part of the process that has to happen with this stakeholder engagement, these kind of discussions about what the steps are that need to be taken and what it looks like on the other side.
And then that's still probably a couple years away.
The very earliest that it could be is September to November of this year, but, that's on the Board of Education, that's for the boards to decide.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
How you guys doing? Nick Capriglione, 5676 New Gretna. Also,
Sorry, your name again, sir?
Nick Capriglione, 5676 New Gretna.
Thank you.
Also Commissioner of Bass River Township. Apparently, questions were raised concerning commissioners. Mr. Brown, did you have some questions you'd like to ask me about some of the township's concerns?
Are you here in an official township capacity?
I'm here as a resident who is also handling some of the questions in questionnaire regarding the sales, possible transfer of the building, and questions we had. It has arisen that questions that we had asked possibly were not factual. I don't apologize for not being here at the start of the meeting, but again, I would ask questions. Would anyone like to ask the township?
If I ask questions of the township, we do that in appropriate conversation, not at a public board meeting.
Well, the public part is based on some of the questions that I may have been quoted as saying, and if they feel it's erroneous, and to me, this is part of a public meeting.
So you have the public comment, Nate?
Questions about some of the building structure, oil tanks in the ground, asbestos in the building. All these questions were raised. It was mentioned that questions were never asked, and I'm here to also state that those questions were asked on numerous times, written down
When and where were they asked?
throughout Bass River Township Commissioners' meetings, and at the last
Just
meeting,
to be clear, so you're saying questions regarding the Bass River School District,
questions
then
regarding,
were asked at a commissioners meeting,
yes, and also.
but that's not official board business.
Well, an official board member was at the last meeting and asked for a list of concerns of which he was given, and I'm assuming, and again, apologize.
Just to be clear though, and I want to make sure that we're right here, that Mr. Fodor at a commissioners meeting is not there in official board capacity.
I understand it.
And you being here are not here in official township capacity, correct?
I am here to answer any township questions, and that would be official. Yes,
Make
sir.
one point as a board solicitor. Sir, this is public comment on
Okay.
agenda items or any items regarding the school. So if you want to make a comment, whatever it may be, or comments, that's fine. Please
Well-
address them to the board through the president, but this isn't a situation where we're going to talk about what may have happened or may not have
Well,
happened.
the only-
Sir, hold on one second. Between business administrators and board members who went to township committee meeting. Again, for purposes of this meeting, public comment, I ask you to make a comment, absolutely, you have a First Amendment right to do that, but direct it towards the board president,
Right, then-
and she'll respond.
The comment's going to be, we as residents are curious as to the status, possibility of oil tanks in ground, possibility of soil contamination. Also concerned about in the statement that was presented by Weiser, measures, there's asbestos in the building. Concerned about how that would be addressed. Again, this is a document that was presented to us by this organization, so as a resident, if there is asbestos in the building, how will that be cleaned up? If we're selling the building, will that be addressed before the sale? If there's any other hazardous materials or any concerns that the residents should be aware of, will they let know prior to any kind of sales?
Your comments are duly noted, sir, and any of those questions will be discussed to the extent they're necessary to be answered.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Strigliano.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the public? Okay, now we go on to the board forum. Mr. Fodor, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, in an answer to Mr. Capriglione, yes, I was at the last township meeting, as I go to most township meetings. And it seems like every township meeting, I get fired upon question after question after question about the school. So I stated that that's not the place for the school. This is the night, date, meeting, whatever, come express your opinions here. Exactly what I did. Not here for a school board meeting, I'm here as a member of the township. You know, I'm glad to see that it was out tonight. I'm glad everybody's been out and spoke up. It's been a while since we've been able to have that person. So Mr. Capriglione knows since he was late, I do have your list, and Mr. Brown will accept it at the end of the night tonight. And then you two can do your thing there. Anyone, I appreciate if anybody still left on the computer or whatever. I know it got a little heated tonight. I apologize, but sometimes things just can't be done. It was nice that everybody came out. I thank you.
Mrs. Fodor, would you like to say something?
Pardon?
Would you like to say something during the board forum? No. Mr. Reeves?
Yes, I think a lot was said here tonight. A lot means a lot out in the open and for conjecture and everything else. However, the questions, the stuff in the newspaper, the stuff that has been asked, I think everybody just needs to look at everything and let it bear itself out. Education tonight we're in big trouble. Not only a little town like Bass River Township, this state, this country, wake up. We can no longer tolerate just cancel culture and nobody matters but the dictators. No, we are in a free America. In the days of dictatorship and people trying to dictate what's going to happen to us in our communities has to stop. But it has to start at levels like this, as it has all over. I get out there to say, oh, they're following some other, dancing monkeys lead. No, it's reality. It's reality. This, cancer culture. This is everybody, the dictatorships, the self-proclaimed dictators. It has to end. The citizens of our communities, the parents, grandparents, all need to be heard for the sake of our children. Because guess what, folks? We don't wake up. Tomorrow they may not be in America. We may be sitting on our porch telling our children what they have. What they have. Now, to go back to the Revolutionary War, about this country is based on, let's do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that as a school board member for many, many years at Pioneer Regional High School, as well as Bass River, I have seen some very challenging times in the last 3 years with this board and before. And I know it's very challenging for all the residents of New Gretna, but we're all neighbors. We need to stick together and make sure we do what's right for the students that leave this district and go to another district. I just want to make sure that the decisions we make as a whole, as the board, whether it was the past is the past, decisions were made. We didn't always agree. We are now where we are. So we need to continue to move forward and make sure that we do the best that we can do based on the knowledge that is given to us. And I would like to see our students receive a smooth transition for whatever may happen in the next couple months when we go to this new structure that is unknown and uncertain. And Mr. Brown, I would like to say that I know that it's been a challenge for you. You've had much to do with a lot of issues. It's not an understatement. And, I pray for you and your decisions, for your family. And I just want to make sure, as the president of this school board, that I can move forward with the rest of our members as a whole board and know that when we transition, we're doing the right thing in every step that we take. And that's why we ask so many questions. That's why our heart is so concerned. As I said before, am in the company of Mr. Williams, who have been on school boards for many, many years. We know the ins and outs. We know some things we don't want to know. But we know one thing. These are our kids. And we have to support them. So I would like all the neighbors, residents, fellow colleagues that we work with, school board members, Pinelands, Little Lake Harbor, whoever else we might come in contact with, Mr. Kalak, just work together and show some transparency so that we can move forward and know that we each made the right decision. Thank you.
Mr. President, was the new elected official for Bass River representing Pinelands, heard anybody at tonight's meeting?
Yes, so I believe that you're referring to
Ms. Martin?
Patty Martin.
Yes.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did speak with her as the representative for Bass River students. I also emailed her. I also asked her to come to this meeting because we thought that it was very important, and she declined.
How about Dr. McCooley?
I'm sorry?
Were you able to get in touch or ask Dr. McCooley to attend our meeting tonight?
I was not, no.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, about a year and a half ago, we had asked for them to come quarterly to our meetings, and I think 2 times we got representation from either Dr. McCooley or her assistant, and then nothing else.
I think what we can do, since we're finishing up board for Mr. Fodor, is we can put that on the next agenda, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And at this time, we're going to go into executive session. Resolved that the Board of Education meet in closed session to discuss matters as listed below. Items so discussed will be disclosed to the public, providing it does not violate New Jersey statutes and regulations regarding disclosure of information affecting this matter, contractual matters, shared service agreements, and terms of attorney-client privileges. So, at this time, I would ask the
We
public.
need a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you, Tom.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out this evening. Hopefully we'll see you again.
Yes, thank you.
And, I don't know if anybody wants to hang out, but I don't know how long it's gonna be, so.
There's not gonna be any action taken.
It's gonna be-
Motion.
Second?
Second. Carrie, you good with everything?
Are you
You
good?
in favor?
All in favor?
Good with breakfast?
Aye.
Aye.
This time, we're back in public, we adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn public.
Second.
So moved.
Okay, 9:05, adjourn.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Carrie, in favor?
Meeting's adjourned.